Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing very well. So in today's video I wanted to show you how to make this really cute deer tote bag using cross stitch on crochet. This was really fun to make and I hope you all enjoy this one. So let's get into the tutorial. Okay, so for this project you're going to be needing your cream colour, which is going to be the main colour of the bag. This is a double knit yarn and I've got about 150 to 200 grams of this, and that is more than enough for the tote bag size that we are going to make. But if you're making a tote bag slightly wider or taller, you might need more yarn than this, so just make sure that you get enough yarn for the project. Then for the extra colours for the design, I'm going to be using this sandy brown colour for the main kind of part of the deer, and then I'm going to be using a darker brown for the shadow parts of the deer, and then I have this kind of khaki olive green colour for the grass. And I just have a white colour for the details of the deer's face. Then I have a baby pink colour for the ears. And then I have a blue colour for the bow. And finally I have some black yarn for the outline and the eyes. All of the secondary colours that I'm using are also double knit. So I'm going to be using a 3mm hook for this project. Normally you would use a 3.5 or a 4mm hook for double knit yarn, but I like to size down a hook just because my tension is slightly looser. You're also going to be needing some scissors, a sewing needle with an eye large enough to fit double knit yarn in. So I'm going to just show you how to make the panels. You're going to want to make 2 of these panels and it is simply just 2 squares doing single crochet, so it's nice and easy. You'll notice that on the graph there are 67 squares going up vertically and there are 68 squares going across horizontally. So you're always going to want to make a chain that is the amount of the vertical side, not the horizontal, because we are going to be doing cross stitches where the lines are going up vertically rather than horizontally, and that's just because the holes, when you separate them apart, are slightly more in line with each other, and this makes the cross stitches a lot more neater. So because the graph height says 67, you would make a chain of 67 and then an extra chain for the turning chain, so that'll be 68 in total. Now just for the example part of this video, I'm not going to actually make 68 chains just because it's a little bit long. So I'm just going to basically do 10 chains plus 1 for the turning chain, but obviously you would be doing 68 chains. So I'm just going to make my 10 plus 1 chains, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. And then I'm going to add 1 for the turning chain. So this is what you should have. Obviously your chain would be a lot longer than mine. And then you're going to basically make 1 single crochet into the second chain from the hook. I personally like to go into the back bump rather than the chain. So the back bump is going to be when you flip your chain over, and you should go into that little kind of horizontal line that goes between each chain. So I'm just inserting my hook into that second back bump from the hook, like that, and then I'm going to make my single crochet as normal. And then I'm going to go into each back bump all the way across, leaving me with 10 single crochets in total. However, if you find that crocheting into the back bumps is too difficult, then you of course can just crochet into the chain as normal. I just think that this way looks a little bit more neater. So I'm just going to go into my next chain, make a single crochet, into the next chain, single crochet, and I'm going all the way across and making my single crochets. So once you've done your very last single crochet, we will start the next row, which is going to be row 2. And we're basically going to be doing as many rows as there are squares on the horizontal part. So rather than doing 67 rows as you would if you were working horizontally up, back and forth, because we're going from the vertical side of the graph and working across, we're actually going to be doing 68 rows. So I'm going to start my next row by turning the work. So I'm not chaining 1 or anything, I'm just going to turn my work around, and then I'm going to go into my first single crochet stitch and make a single crochet, and it's single crochets for this entire panel pattern. going into my next stitch and making a single crochet, and then I'm going into my next stitch and making a single crochet, and I'm going all the way across making single crochet stitches. Okay, so now I've completed 2 rows, so that is going to be 2 rows out of my 68, and then I would just continue by turning the work around, so we're back to the front, and I would just make 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way across, and I would just do that until I have 68 rows in total. So after you've completed your panel, it should look like this, and once you have completed your panel, you're just going to want to chain 1 and fasten off. And then your cross stitch design is actually going to be where we flip the work portrait. So you're going to have your longest part of the panel coming up the side, and then the shortest part is the width, so it's portrait, and you'll know that it's portrait if the lines are going down vertically. Just as an extra note, once you have made your panels, the bag should measure about roughly 30 centimeters width and about 33 centimeters in height. You'll notice that when you separate the panels, you have these little dots, and this is what we're going to be cross-stitching into. So each cross-stitch is going to represent 1 square on the graph, and a square on our work is going to represent 4 holes that kind of are placed together to look like a square. So for example, if I just show you what a square would be, so if we go here, you'll notice that there is a hole right here, and then there's one right here, here, and here. So that would be technically a square. And then the one next to it would basically be 2 holes to the right. So then the next square would be here, 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 and here. So you'll notice that when you kind of turn the work back to how it originally is, here we have our single crochet stitches, and either side of our single crochet stitches are 2 holes. Can you see this is a single crochet stitch? And we have 2 holes either side it. So when we flip our work back kind of portrait wise, you'll notice that the first hole of, sort of the first row of this panel, the first 2 holes are these top single crochet stitches. So if I just pull apart these holes, you'll see, okay, and then the ones next to them are the bottom of the single crochet stitch of that final row. So we have our 2 holes right here, and then we have 2 more below that single crochet stitch. So when we're working across, our first 4 holes right here, and then we move across 2 holes for the next square. So you'll notice that for every single crochet stitch there are 2 holes above it and 2 holes below it. So that's why there are 4 holes per square for our graph. So we're going to be starting with our green section of the design, which is going to be the grass part, and this section is quite a large part, so you might need a longer strand of yarn, not too long because you don't want to make it tangle when we're working with it, but you do want to make sure that it is long enough and that you're not having to weave it in constantly because it's too short. My personal preference for cross-stitching these designs is to kind of go colour by colour versus row by row. If you do find it easier to go row by row, just like you would with pixel crochet, then go ahead. I am going to be starting at the bottom row anyway, so that is row 8. And I will be working up obviously because the part I'm starting with is the green grass, but I do like to do colour section by colour section. I just think that it is easier to do it that way, and it is less room for mistakes because you're able to kind of count, well, there are 2 white stitches here and then there's 6 above it and so on and so forth. So in my opinion that is going to be the easiest way and less room for mistakes. So I'm going to be starting with the green grass section, and I'm going to cut a long piece of the green, and then I'm going to basically place the green yarn onto my needle, and then I'm going to find the area where the first 2 green stitches sit. So you'll notice on the graph the first 2 green stitches are at row 8 and they are stitches 15 and 16. I'm going to be finding the 15th and 16th stitch of row 8. So here are the first row of holes right here at the bottom. So there's like these going across right here. So that's technically our row 1. So I'm going to be counting from this point up 8 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is where we start. And I'm going to count from that very top single crochet stitch that we finished the panel with. And I'm going to count across to the 15th hole. So there's 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, right here. So we always start our cross stitches from our bottom left hole, we go up to the top right, and then when we finish the cross stitch we go from the right hole up to the top left. So you're kind of going up diagonally and then you come back the other way diagonally, so you effectively create these cross shapes. So I'm going to be taking my needle and placing it from the back to the front of that 15th bottom left hole. I'm going to pull the yarn through just gently so that none of it tangles, and you want to sort of leave a small tail at the back, and you're just going to hold it there with your finger. Just hold it there and it will weave itself in as you go. So for the cross stitch I'm going to go up to the top right hole. So this is the square that we're working with. We're our first green square, and I'm going up to the top right hole. I'm going to push my needle through and pull that through, again being gentle so you don't want to tangle any of the work, like that. So that is going to be our first half cross stitch, because it is technically only half of a cross. Now you can either do it cross stitch by cross stitch, but I personally prefer to do it by half cross stitch, and then going back in the opposite direction and finishing the cross stitch. But to do your full cross stitch you would go down to the bottom right hole and pull through. And then you would go back up to the top left hole and pull through. Okay, so you see how you have a cross. Okay, so I'm going to show you my personal preference of doing it. So I've done my first half cross stitch, and now I'm going to complete my second half cross stitch, which is going to be the 16th square of row 8. So I'm going to go from the bottom right hole of my next square, right there, and I'm going to pull through. Like that. And then I'm going to go back up to my top right of my next square and pull through. Like that. And then I'm going to complete my cross stitches, since I only have 2 green stitches for this row, so I'm going to just complete it. I'm going to go now from the bottom right hole of my second square and pull through. And then I'm going to go back up to my top left of the 16th square, to the top left hole, and pull through. Okay, so that is our first cross stitch completed, and now I'm going to complete my second cross stitch, which was the 15th stitch of row 8. So I will now go back down to my bottom right hole of that first square and pull through. And then I'm going back up to the top left and pull through. You'll notice that the cross stitches do touch each other, because technically when you move across a square you're only moving across 2 holes, so you don't want them to be separated. You do want them to be touching. So we have a square right here and we have a square right here, but they do technically connect in the middle, and that's completely normal. So I'm going to start the next row. So our next square is going to be the 14th stitch of row 9. So I'm going to go up a row, so this is going to be my row 9, and I will count the 14th stitch. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14. So our 14th stitch is going to start right here, like that. So I will pull my yarn through to that, from that bottom left hole. So for this section we have 5 cross stitches over here, and then we have another 3 at stitch 29, 30 and 31. So I'm going to start my next half cross stitch, which is at stitch 14. So I'm going up to my top right hole and pulling through. And then I'm going to go back down to the next bottom left hole of the second stitch for this row, and I'm going to pull through. And then I'm going to go back up to the top right hole of that second stitch and pull through. Like that, and then I'm just going to repeat that again until I have my 5 cross stitches, half cross stitches. Okay, so I've done my first 5 half cross stitches, and then I've got another 3 over here. That is at stitch 29. So I'm currently at stitch 18, so I will count up until 29. So that's 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 and 29. So that's this stitch right here. So I'll go from the back to the front and pull through. Okay, and then I'm going to go up to the top right hole of this square and pull through. Okay, and then I have 2 stitches next to it, that's stitch 30 and 31. So I'm going to go from the back to the front of the hole directly below it, which is going to be the bottom left hole of my next square. And then I'm going to go back from the back to the front of my next square, the bottom left hole of the next square, and pull through. And then up to the top right square. Okay, and then I'm just going to work the other way, completing these cross stitches. So I'm going from the front back to the front and pull through. And then up to the top left and pull through. And then back down to the bottom right of the next square and pull through. And then back up to the top left and pull through. And I'm just going to continue all the way across, completing the cross stitches, so I'll be going from the bottom right up to the top left for each square. Okay, so now I've completed row 2, so I'm going to continue that process all the way up until I've finished all of the green section. Basically, I'm going to be working the normal kind of horizontal rows up until about row 16, and then you'll notice after row 16 we have green going up either side, so I will work on each side part individually, and that might mean fastening off and then kind of reattaching the yarn. The other thing I wanted to add was sometimes along the pattern you'll have squares that go up vertically and they are kind of above each other. So when you would start a row like that, where we have a green square on top of a green square, that might mean that when you start your next row in the bottom left corner, like here, you're actually going to be undoing the stitch from below. So when you have a stitch on top of each other, when you are starting your next row, instead of going into the bottom left, you can go up to the top right and pull through. and then you can go back down to the bottom left like that, and then you would complete it normally by going from the bottom right up to the top left. Okay, so that's what you would do when you have squares on top of each other when you're starting your next row and you don't want the stitch below to undo. But I am going to complete the green section now off camera, like I said, doing the side parts individually, and then I will come back and we'll move on to the deer section. Okay, so I've just finished the green grass section, so I'm now going to just weave the end into the back. So I basically just sew like in the opposite direction of where these lines are. So I just go into these lines, I pick up a few of them on my needle, like that, and I just slide the needle through, like that, and I just cut the yarn. And I have a few looser ends which I'm going to weave in later, but that's pretty much how I weave in the main section that I just did. So I'm going to cut a long piece of the light brown yarn. So the first light brown stitch starts at row 18 and it is the 16th stitch. So I'm just going to count up to row 18. So down here is row 8, so 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So it's this row right here, and it is the second stitch from this green stitch, so it is the 16th stitch, so that's the black stitch, and then this is the light brown stitch. So I'm going into the bottom left corner of that light brown square where the light brown stitch would go, going into that bottom left corner, putting through. I'm literally doing the exact same thing we did before, and I'm going up to the top right corner and pulling through. And you'll notice that we have 3 light brown stitches kind of in the middle, and then we have a larger amount over here on the right, but you'll notice that above the light brown stitch that I'm about to do, I have 3. So essentially I kind of want to avoid dragging the yarn kind of into here, because then we'll have a lot of lines like this. I did it a few times over here because they were really short pieces to drag it over to, but if I dragged the light brown yarn over here, you can see that it just kind of like has that messier look, and even though it is on the back, it's not going to be seen. It's just something that I personally prefer to do, the kind of section by section versus row by row. So I'm going to now focus on the light brown section here. So there are 3 stitches going up, and then there's kind of one over here. So I'm just going to complete that now. So I'm going to do the bottom right section, and then I'm going up to the top left hole to complete the cross stitch, and then I'm going up 1, so I'm going to place a square right above, and I'm going to go into the top right because if I go into the bottom left it's going to undo. So I'm going into the top right and then back down to the bottom left. And then kind of completing it normally, going into the bottom right and up to the top left. Okay, and then I'm doing that one more time because I have 3 cross stitches in a row. Okay, so I've got my 3 cross stitches all above each other, and then I have another cross stitch in light brown 2 stitches away from this. So I'm going, so this would be the dark brown stitch, and then this would be the dark brown stitch, and then we have the light brown stitch 3 stitches away. So I'm going into the bottom left corner, going up to the top right, back down to the bottom right, and then up again to the top left. So now that I've done this section over here, I'm going to kind of weave the ends in and cut the yarn, just because this section is done and I don't really need to come back to this side, and I don't really want to drag the light brown yarn over. So I'm just going to weave the yarn in, and then I'm going to cut it. And now I'm going to move back down to row 18 and back down here, and I'm going across to stitch number 29. That's this one right here. I'm going from the back to the front, from the bottom left corner up to the top right, and I have 3 stitches to do here, so that is stitch 29 to 31. And then at stitch 37, I'm going to continue that kind of line of brown stitches across, so I will be skipping 5 stitches. Okay, so I've just done the stitches from stitch 37 to stitch 50, and now I'm going to skip the next 2 stitches because that is going to be dark brown stitches. So this is the first dark brown stitch, second, so I'm going into the 3rd stitch away to complete my last light brown stitch. Like that. And then I'm just going to go back along the row, completing my cross stitches, and then that is that row complete. And then I'm going to continue up to this portion over here, so that is going to be row 19 and 20. And then I'm going to basically continue the brown deer section as normal, only focusing on the brown area. So I'm going over here, and then I kind of will fasten off and then work on the head section separately over here. Okay, so I have now finished doing all of the cross stitch design, and this is what it looks like at the front. I'm really happy with it, it's so cute. So now I'm going to be showing you how we attach this to the other panel to create the kind of bag section. Okay, so you're going to want to make sure that all of your messy sides are on the outside, like this, and then all of your neat sides, so the deer and then the neat side of this panel, are on the inside, hidden away from you. And then we're going to be taking our hook and the cream colour for the bag, and you want to make a slip knot with the cream, and you're going to be starting in the top corner of the bag. If you're left-handed, then you want to start in the top right. If you're right-handed, you want to start in the top left. I'm going to kind of flip the bag to the side because I'm going to be working down this way and then up this way and then back up along this side. So you can either attach the bag with slip stitches or you could attach it with single crochets, whatever your preference is. The slip stitches are going to be a lot tighter and make it a lot more secure, but it may create kind of more of a curve. So the single crochet might be a bit better if you want it genuinely to be a lot neater. So I'm going to go with the single crochet because I just find that it's a little bit easier. So I'm going to go into the kind of top right corner of my deer panel. I'm just inserting my hook into that kind of top right stitch, and then I'm grabbing the top right stitch of the back panel as well, the same corresponding one, like that. And then I'm going to grab my slip knot and I'm pulling the slip knot through both of those stitches, like that. And then just to secure it, I'm going to chain 1, like that. So now we're going to be making single crochets or slip stitches, whichever you prefer, all the way down through both panels. So you want to make sure that your panels line up, and I'm going to go into the exact same stitch that I just brought the slip knot into. So I'm going into that deer panel, the first stitch, and the first stitch on the back panel. I'm just going to loop in this end so that I can weave in as I go. And then I'm going to make a single crochet through both of these stitches. I'm kind of pulling the yarn through those panels. It can be a bit fiddly, but just take your time. And then I'm finishing the single crochet like that. And then I'm going to go into the next stitch of the deer panel, insert my hook, and the next stitch of the back panel, insert my hook, and then make a single crochet through both. That, and then into the next stitch of the deer panel and the next stitch of the back panel, and then make a single crochet through both. And I'm completing this all the way down the side, so I'm going to continue that all the way until I get to the corner. Okay, so now I've single crocheted all the way across this top part. I'm going to now kind of tilt the work. So now I'm working across the bottom of the bag, and now I don't have stitches across here. Okay, so now I'm just basically going to do one single crochet for every row I have across the bottom. I have 68 rows going across the width of the tote bag, so I will do that many single crochets. So I'm going to insert my hook into this sort of first hole of the first row of this bottom part, and I'm going to insert my hook into the same hole on the back panel, and then I'm just going to make a single crochet as normal. And then I'm going to go into the next sort of hole across, and the next hole on the back panel, make a single crochet, and then I'm going into the next hole of the front panel and the next hole on the back panel, making a single crochet, and I'm doing that all the way across the bottom. Okay, so I've just finished single crocheting across the bottom, and now I'm just going to continue going across the last side part of the bag, and that is going to be through actual stitches, so it's much easier, just like we did at the beginning. So I'm just going to single crochet all the way across the side now, and I'm going to meet you back once I get to this top left corner. If you're right-handed, you'll be finishing at the top right hand corner. Okay, so I've just completed my last single crochet and I've reached the top left corner of the bag. So I'm now going to fasten off, so I'm simply just going to chain one and then cut the yarn. And then just pull the loop out and then you can tighten it. And then any loose ends I'm just going to weave in at this point, and then I'm going to show you how we do the bag strap. Okay, so I'm now going to show you how to make the bag strap. So you're going to want to take your main colour and make a slip knot. And then I'm going to be making a chain of 11. If you want your bag strap to be wider, then you can do more chains, but I'm going to do a chain of 11. I think this is the perfect amount. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Once you have your chain, you're just going to want to flip the chain over, and you're going to be single crocheting in those back bumps just like we did at the beginning. So I'm going into the second back bump from the hook and I'm making my single crochet, and then I'm going into the next back bump of the chain and making a single crochet, and I'm going into each back bump all the way across and making single crochets. Okay, so once you have reached the end of the row, you're just going to turn the work just like we did for the main bag panels, and you're just going to make one single crochet into each stitch all the way across. So that's 10 single crochets, and I'm going to weave in this end as I go. So I'm going into my first stitch and making a single crochet, and then into each stitch all the way across 1 single crochet in each. So that's what it looks like when you have done your second row, and now I'll just turn the work and continue to do rows and rows of single crochets until I reach the bag strap length that I desire. Now if you want your bag strap to be longer, then you can do more rows than me, but I'm going to be doing 126 rows of single crochet. So I'm going to come back once I've done my 126, and then I would just chain 1 and cut the yarn to fasten off. So I'm going to come back once I've finished all of my rows, and then I'm going to show you how we attach the bag strap to the bag. Okay, so I have just turned the bag back to the right side, and now we have all of these neat seams, and I've just completed both of my bag straps, and then I chained 1 and fastened off. So now I'm going to weave in the little end into the work, and I'm simply going to kind of measure out either side roughly where I want the bag strap to start. So from the edge of the bag, I'm probably going to place each strap about 8 to 10 centimeters in from the edge, so about here, and then where the other side is, I will sew the other part of the bag about 8, maybe about 7 centimeters from the edge on both sides. So about 7 centimeters. If you want it to be wider or shorter, then you can change that. I'm just going to be sewing mine, but you could also single crochet or slip stitch. So I'm simply just going to cut a long string of my cream yarn. I'm just going to tie a small knot at the end. Then you want to make sure that your strap is not twisted, so that when it curves up it is straight. So I'm going to start about here, and I'm simply just going to sew across the top of the bag and the strap, kind of including them both, and I'm just going to go from left to right and then right to left to make sure that it is all weaved in. Okay, so I've just finished sewing this side. I basically flipped the strap down and then I sewed it so that the bag was kind of the back panel and the strap was the front panel, so that when I flip it back up I have this nice neat line. And I'm going to do the exact same thing, again making sure the strap isn't twisted. I'm going to do the exact same thing, sewing this edge to this edge of the bag about 7 centimeters away from the edge. So I'm going to do it off camera and then I'm going to give you the final reveal. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye guys.